Hey everybody, and welcome to the Startup Savant podcast. I'm your host, Ethan, and this show is about the stories, challenges, and triumphs of fast-scaling startups and the founders who run them. We've got two founders on the show today. Our guests are Melissa Bentivoglio and Lee Belsberg. They are the co-founding pair and happily wedded couple behind Frame, a fitness company developing a beautifully designed Pilates reformer and offering a workout membership to go with the machine. Now, I want to help these guys brag a little bit by telling you that they are going to be the first company in the industry to ship a large workout machine at the seed stage. And get this, they've only got 5 employees. How did they accomplish this? Well, I guess you're just going to have to listen to find out. Before we get into it, I want to remind y'all about our goal to hit 100 reviews by episode 100. So if you want to help us out, head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review. Simple. All right, without further delay, let's jump in with the founders of Frame, Melissa and Lee. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so I gave the audience a little bit of a teaser on what Frame is, but I'm sure they'd rather hear it from you. So simple question, what is Frame?
Frame is the first digitally connected Pilates reformer.
That is a nice and tidy answer. So let's jump into the one step deeper. What problem is this company solving?
So in the world of reformer Pilates specifically, reformers are not something that exist in people's homes. You typically have to go into a large group class and or take a private session. So we decided that we wanted to transcend the way Pilates was being practiced. We wanted to make it more accessible to Pilates enthusiasts and really everybody, whether you've tried reformer or not. It's one of the most efficacious workouts. And we now have created the solution, which is you can have a reformer in your home that's beautifully designed, that looks like a beautiful piece of art or a piece of furniture, and you also have the user interface to go along with it so that you don't have to be intimidated by not understanding how to sequence or even how to tackle a workout on a reformer, because it can be perceived as complicated.
It was lacking in innovation and steeped in foundation, and I think that's what we wanted to change and disrupt.
So you guys started this business a couple of years ago, and things are really starting to move now. But what was the driving force that led you to start this business? Because I know that both of you have backgrounds in business and in fitness and instruction. So it kind of obviously leads to this. But what made you decide to do this business specifically?
I'll let Melissa.
So this is my second proprietary reformer design. I embarked on the world of industrial design in 2017, 2018, and the intention was to create my own proprietary reformer for brick-and-mortar, for my brick-and-mortar studio, which I was opening in Toronto, Canada. So I embarked on that journey. I loved it, the creative process. I loved having a concept and then bringing it to fruition. It was one of the most satisfying feelings I have ever experienced. And my studio, which I did end up opening, ultimately was shuttered by the pandemic. So I had created a reformer. It was an amazing but very challenging 3-year process. My studio was closed, and I said to Lee when we were, at home in quarantine, early stages, like I think my studio was only closed 2 or 3 days, and I said to him, I have an idea for a home version. Regardless of what was going on in the world, I'd already started to think about the competitive landscape of what was going on with digital fitness, but also just and I had mentioned it earlier, but the ability to work out at home, the convenience it allowed. So I had this idea and I said to Lee, do you want to partner with me? And he had already had successful businesses, and he essentially said to me, okay, well, show me the design. And I had created a preliminary design with the same industrial designer I'd been working with. And he was like, okay, so where's the business plan? And I was like, well, I didn't get that far yet. And so he really...
the cart before the horse.
He really stressed that we had to create a blueprint and really see if there was, like, we had to dive into some of the analytics. We had to look to see what the actual competitive landscape was doing, where the Pilates and specifically the reformer Pilates market was going. So we started doing research, and I would say a week later, he's like, let's do this.
So Lee, when you recommended that there be a blueprint put together, is this, I mean, it sounds like this is something that you've kind of like done before. Is this like an actual physical document that gets put together? Are there, maybe it doesn't look specifically like this, but for every business, is there kind of like a form that you could create that's like a fill in the blanks and see if, and then like spit it out the other side? Or is it more of a bespoke process that you go through for each business idea?
Well, I wish they had ChatGPT when we were initially doing our business plan, because that would have made things a lot
simpler,
easier. But I come from a background where I work with a ton of different businesses, and when I look at those businesses, the successful ones that I've seen, they all have a blueprint of exactly how understanding the market, understanding research that goes into deciding if this is something that you want to pursue. And when is
there a problem? Do you have the solution? A 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan?
Well,
and substantiate your claims, even just for ourselves, like internally.
Yeah, and when I was, some businesses, I think, don't need a lot of capital to start up. But the business that we were going into, you needed a lot of capital to get it to market. So, when you're pitching, for instance, an investor, and I knew we were going to have to go into a raise. And when you're pitching investors with an idea on a piece of paper, you better have done your research, because they want to know that you've thought of everything. Obviously, it's, it drastically changes as you pursue the business. But you need to make sure that they're comfortable with the investment that they're going to make in two founders. And it's not about the blueprint as much as about the thought and the work that goes into it, behind it. And then pitching using a deck, right, to back it up. So, yeah, I mean, when I see successful businesses, they have a blueprint, and that's
at least initially, and the blueprint is iterative.
Correct.
Changes.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
And you get punched in the face a lot.
Lincoln that said that. Right. All right, so let's jump back into Frame specifically. Now, every business can bite. Every business has teeth, but it feels like this business is like 8 businesses in one. I mean, you've got the manufacturing process, you've got courses and a membership platform to build. You've got software, branding, marketing, sales, logistics. You've got 3 kids.
We do.
What made you all think that this was a mountain worth climbing?
You only have one life. Take a shot. That's kind of the way I look at it. In life, it's either you stay comfortable or you get out of your comfort zone and try and really, make something of your life. Not to say that this isn't for everyone. And, I think the fact that Melissa and I are together, it made it a lot easier because, one of us wasn't gone all the time. Both of us were gone all the time.
I think also I innately have a very risk-taking personality. You are definitely more safe.
Totally.
Also, even just the fact that your family is sort of like a real estate type family. It's a little more conservative. It's definitely not venture. So we were taking a risk together. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's an intangible that you can't really describe why you're just supposed to do it. You could ask me specifically, what was that moment where you just said, but I think there were several moments collectively where we just said, we know we have something. We know because we did some preliminary, conversations with some very important people in the business. And when something is immediately received, and again, not every business is going to be immediately and positively received, but we had that initial validation that for us was just like, it solidified. We just knew we were going to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So before we jump into the manufacturing that I'm hoping we can go pretty deep on, I've got one quick question about the dynamic of this co-founder relationship. Obviously, you two are co-founders. Obviously, you two are married. There's 3 kids. What is the secret sauce to building a business alongside a relationship with your spouse?
One person in the relationship has to be a little quieter than the other.
I think for Lee and I and our specific dynamic and how it pertains to our business and why it's working, we are very different. So the old saying, opposites attract, true, but also we complement one another in a way that makes for a very successful business relationship. Lee is much more outgoing than I am. People really like Lee. He has a keen ability to connect with really almost anybody, regardless of their background and how it pertains to our business and growing the business. And I definitely have a stronger personality. But it also, I'm able to disassociate and sort of like take emotion out of business. And that also works.
I think it's just
tough decisions.
Yeah.
I make them easily.
I think it's also trust, right? When you start a business, it doesn't matter what business it is. You really have to trust your partner. And when you have 3 kids with your wife and your partner, I mean, there's more than just trust. You're building something for your future. And, nobody can take advantage of 2 people that are in it together. And so in a startup...
That's a very valid point.
In a startup, you see people come and go. But the one person that will never leave, I hope, is my wife and partner. And by having that, you really have each other's backs. And I think that's extremely important when doing starting up.
I think that's a beautiful answer and a beautiful message to everyone out there. We should all take a lesson from that.
We should start a business with our partner.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work for everybody. Tell you that.
I'm going to do it tomorrow.
We actually had one of our investors initially. He was an investor at the time. Basically, tell us because he was in banking in New York, and he said, "I'm going to have to do some research on spouses."
I'm going to have my junior analyst pull some stats on how effective businesses are that are run by married co-founders.
And if you're out there listening to this, Joe,
it's very favorable.
he ended up investing. So
good job, Joe. You made the right decision. All right, so you mentioned earlier that you guys are different, and with that, you come from different backgrounds, but neither of those backgrounds is in manufacturing. I know, Melissa, you said that you've got a little bit of that, starting in 2017, but no deep background in manufacturing. But luckily, manufacturing physical products is super easy, right?
That's what they say.
The complexity associated with manufacturing and manufacturing a product and bringing that manufactured product to market is something that would be very challenging for me to even describe to you verbally. It is an iterative process. You're constantly iterating, and if you don't iterate in I'm going to say in real time, but as quickly as as quickly as required to continue and build upon the momentum, then I think that's when we see a lot of companies fail to achieve the next level.
Just to elaborate on that, I would say that, one of our biggest investors happens to be the largest manufacturer of fitness equipment in the world. So we're not using a third party. We're going right to the source. And Melissa and I actually made a trip out to China, I want to say a couple months ago.
Last month. It was so fun.
And we got to see firsthand our product being mass manufactured.
Nice.
And, being able to be hands-on in the manufacturing phase, I think, really helped us expedite ourselves to get to market. And having really great advisors that have done this before and have created incredible businesses like Schwinn, Nautilus, Stairmaster, Bowflex, Star Trek, it gave us the confidence to really bring our product to fruition.
So let's go back to the beginning and let's try to paint a picture together, because I think that this is one of the only physical product companies that we've had on the show, and based on just the size and complexity and everything else that goes into the reformer, I think that if we go deep on this manufacturing process, we're going to be able to really pull out a lot of helpful bits for people that want to also, go into some sort of physical product manufacturing, whether it's as complicated as a reformer or, as not complicated as a kitchen spatula. So let's try to paint this picture together. Let's walk through the process. And I know, Will, there are so many details that are going to be, painted over in this case, but the big points kind of in the process of light bulb moment to the frame reformer landing on your customer's doorstep. How did this process start? And then let's walk through it as close to step by step as we can.
I want to just say, we're talking about manufacturing the hardware, but what we have not spoken about is manufacturing software as well.
Right.
So you're not just manufacturing hardware, which is, would be a lot easier to just manufacture one instead of doing both. But when you're dealing with hardware and software where they are married together, that's a big process. From the manufacturing side, I'll let Melissa kind of dive into it, but
yes.
I think we can't leave out the software component of it because it's such a huge piece.
It's a huge piece. It's actually just as important as the actual physical hardware. You're taking the classes on a tablet that has a user interface that has all of our pre-recorded content, and you're engaging with the software as much as you are engaging with the actual physical product, which is the reformer. Having said that, the way we tackled it, and I think we tackled it in a very expeditious and efficient way, manufacturing, to simplify it so that it's digestible, you have prototyping phases. You have a design. You design something, you understand what you want to see from a functionality perspective. Once you've solidified what you want from a functionality perspective, you then think about the aesthetics. That's all encompassed in design. And then you start the prototyping. You do a rapid prototype.
Design, is that penciled on the back of a napkin?
It's with an ID, like an industrial design, or
the preliminary, you have an idea of what you want. I'm not a great artist, so my sketches wouldn't look anything like the actual.
She's not a great artist.
The actual renders, which is the earlier stages of design. So I'm highly verbal. I'm a verbal being. So I articulated exactly what I wanted, how I wanted it to function. The functionality component of a design is the most important thing. You can fine-tune aesthetics. Aesthetics obviously very important to the consumer and also to myself, but it's all about the functionality. So, and there was novel functions, things that I wanted to do that didn't exist yet. So we had to understand how we could create the function, and then you move into rapid prototyping. So there's multiple steps in prototyping. There's a rapid prototype. You do a prototype in renders, and then you rapid prototype an actual physical in our case, reformer.
Sure. So, and are you still working at this level with like an industrial designer?
You work with an industrial designer, you work with engineers, and you're also already working with a manufacturer, because somebody has to actually manufacture the physical product.
And then did you kind of piecemeal this group of people together,
Yes.
or did it all come in one package?
No, it doesn't. I mean, it could come in one package. I decided that I wanted to, I had already worked with an industrial designer.
We wanted to make things complicated a little for ourselves.
Yeah, I already worked with an industrial designer, but, there were certain aspects about that I felt that I could improve upon. So I sought out a different industrial designer that I was really excited to work with. And then we found an amazing engineer who we developed a great relationship with.
We still work with to this day. But what I was going to say, I just wanted to talk about, once you're doing industrial design, you can design anything you want, but it might not be able to be manufactured. So the really interesting part about ID versus manufacturable product is that you have to iterate the ID, because the ID is the industrial designer. So you have to iterate on that, because he might make something look stunning, but you take that to the manufacturer and he says, this can't be done. So, whether it be a long piece of wood where you have to cut into a couple different, pieces, right? So they're very different people. One can create a beautiful aesthetic product. The other one actually builds the product. So working with
sometimes there's a disconnect, and that's why prototyping phases are so crucial.
Yeah.
And I mean, we went through 3 different rapid prototypes. We worked with several different engineers.
There was an evolution of our product.
Yeah,
right? So
the evolution is actually pretty insane.
Yeah.
We have some earlier photo shoots where we were actually shooting content with some earlier versions of the reformer, and there's some pretty fantastic iterations that are now on our final product. But it is a lengthy process that requires a lot of resilience. You cannot get disappointed when the first 2 rapid prototypes or the first two functional prototypes aren't exactly what you envisioned, because that is normal.
Right. And I'm sure that it's also possible that the prototype that you have made can't be mass manufactured as well. So yeah, it sounds like this is and this is why I wanted to get into this, is because it's such a complex issue. But if you are, if you're a startup, if you're a company, if you are going to be building, a physical product, these are the steps that you're going to have to go through. So it's really interesting to hear, the actual story of what actually happened with y'all. So let me give it back to you. We had a napkin drawing that was bad art. I definitely heard that part. And then that was sent to an industrial designer. And then once you worked with the industrial designer to create, kind of the CAD mock-up, you went to an engineer and an actual manufacturer to create the rapid prototypes, and then the working prototypes. So pick it up from there.
Lee?
We actually prototyped with a company out of Portland initially that they had their focus in snowboards. They had never done.
We were working with wood veneer, so it's also allocating and finding the right fit in the stage that you're at. For instance, our current manufacturer, which also happens to be one of our lead investors, extremely important in the world of fitness and fitness equipment, as Lee had mentioned earlier, as one of the largest manufacturers of fitness equipment. Before we even got there, before we even raising, a lot of the capital, our seed, we still had to create functional and rapid prototypes. And we did a lot of that initial work domestically because it allowed us to move quickly. So we were in Portland, Oregon, doing our initial first 3 prototypes. And
then we sent them to our manufacturer, to take a look at it and basically take it apart and rebuild it. And
they had to reverse engineer and say, okay, is this all mass manufacturable? And that's the big question. What do we have to change when we look to putting this on an actual assembly line? And then there's the beta testing and making sure that everything is safe. And then that's a whole other conversation.
I mean, when we're there, they have machines that are just pressing buttons all day long and then pulling the springs. So you have like
our spring engagement is novel.
You have hundreds of thousands of hours of just working with the reformer to make sure all the components work properly.
Right.
And
how many hours we're going to get?
And we actually just hit commercial hours now. So we have enough hours on a reformer that now they can be placed in commercial settings, which is really exciting.
He means in stress testing.
In stress testing.
Okay. And that's like some sort of like licensure type of requirement or something like that?
Well, when you have people that have done this before, they know exactly what needs to be done in order to feel comfortable putting in, hotels or condominiums. But I would say, going back to the manufacturing process, it wasn't just manufacturing it. Once we got it ready to go, then we had to decide how many steps we wanted our customers to have to
assemble it, put it together.
How quickly they can assemble it, and so we basically built the entire reformer in a way where there were only 4 steps when it got
to assemble it.
To assemble it.
And now this is assembly after it lands on your doorstep, or assembly after it lands on the customer's doorstep?
Customers.
Okay.
Ours and the customers. So it's fully assembled.
So one thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that the actual structure of the reformer, the frame, no pun intended, remained intact, and that did not have to be assembled, because with traditional reformers, it comes in all pieces. The carriage is separate. You have to put it onto the frame. The frame itself has to be assembled. So it actually comes as one piece.
Why did you want that specifically?
Because I'd worked with traditional reformers for years, and even having to put your own coiled springs on is not easy. And I wanted it to be as easy and intuitive as possible.
Especially when you're working out at home.
Yeah, and springs are a mess. I know I used to have a trampoline in the backyard, like so many of us, I'm sure, did. And,
yeah, we have one in our backyard.
they sit out and they get in the weather for a little while, and then your kids get older and they get a little heavier and they bounce a little higher, and then those springs start to rust, and they start firing off little parts when they break, and springs.
We luckily haven't run into that.
Well, also, I'm sure springs are being, subjected to weather.
Yeah, exactly. You're not leaving them out in the rain, and if anyone is, that's going to void the warranty, I'm sure. All right. So, so the manufacturer that did the reverse engineering, was this the manufacturer that was in China that you mentioned flying out to?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So how?
So they're California and Xiamen.
Okay, so they had a presence in the States, so that you didn't maybe have to ship a full unit over there.
They have a huge footprint in the USA.
Got it. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so then we're basically at the point where the manufacturer who's going to be building a bunch of these things has figured out the design. They've worked with the engineers. Everything is kind of like ready to go at that manufacturing level. Then, do you decide to then just, basically print off 1,000 of these things, or how do you decide then how many you're going to make, and maybe what are the other decisions that are kind of going into that at that stage?
I'll answer this for a moment. So you don't want to jump in right away into making 1,000, because at this point, and where our conversation left, was that we have finalized a design. There's been beta testing in factory, and there's stress testing, but now we actually want to see it in a controlled setting, but still in market. So we made about 20 final designs. We had instructors all around the world trying them. We shot a lot of content with our instructors on them. We've done over 100 demos with top editors in LA and New York, and they've demoed the product. So we've had a lot of
feedback,
not only feedback, but actual physical testing of the reformer. before we actually decided, okay, this is the design. We think we've done enough work where we are ready to actually put it on an assembly line, approve it, and move into manufacturing. So they were all like handmade prior, even though it is the final design. It's not like a big mass manufactured run.
Right.
So once we did our initial pre-order, that's how we decided how many we were going to manufacture. Now we had an amount that we wanted to hit, but we surpassed that.
Nice.
Which was really exciting. Thank you. And for a pre-order at a product at our price point, it was really exciting to see, the appetite that was involved, and also allowed us for that aha moment where we thought we had a product that, is going to take off. So
without any marketing, we sold 500 pre-orders, and then we were very comfortable saying we can move into our first manufacturing run of 500 because, not dissimilar to like a Tesla model, we had already pre-ordered.
Sure.
So a lot of companies do the opposite. They go into a manufacturing run and let's say they pre-order 500. Now 500 arrives and there's a certain amount of pressure being applied that you now you have this inventory. You don't want it to be stagnant inventory and you must sell them.
So and I think that's the smart thing, because if you make it and then nobody wants it, then you're sitting on.
Well, our proof of concept was solidified and at the onset of us launching to as a public facing company.
So obviously, as you mentioned earlier, there's software, and that's just like one of the other things. You've got the marketing. As I mentioned earlier, this is like 8 businesses in one. You've got, you're doing all these photo shoots. That's management of basically, a business. You're hiring, instructors, you're making these classes, you're building out, I'm sure you're building out, these beautiful sets. It's so many different things. And I know that we've focused a lot on manufacturing. But I know that the seed round that you all raised was $6 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically. $5 million plus we ended up doing a safe.
Gotcha.
So we raised an additional $1 million just internally amongst our lead investors.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so out of that $6 million, and you don't have to give exact figures, but what percentage do you think went into just the like manufacturing and design and building out of the frame reformer itself, not counting software, not counting the photo shoots and everything else that kind of goes along with that?
Manufacturing?
The design and manufacturing and prototyping, and basically like to get it to the point where you had a ready to go. If I send an order to the manufacturer, they are going to ship me what I want.
Close to a couple $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, software is very expensive also.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, absolutely.
Branding,
and
creating the actual brand associated, the even just the digitization, it's all extremely costly. The one thing we didn't really engage with was marketing. Our marketing has been totally organic. We hired a fabulous PR company, and all of our press has been organic. So we've not pressed play on the marketing just yet. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to get to market and actually start shipping in fulfillment with a seed funded company. I
also think that, keeping our team lean. I think a lot of people when they go out and raise money, they look to kind of
expand the teams,
take a little step back, maybe not, be as hands-on. But for us to understand the magnitude of the business that we were getting into, from logistics to manufacturing to design to software to building out a subscription model to building out an investor base, we really wanted to understand the intricacies of the business. And the only way to do that was to be completely hands-on and to have enough money to get to market on a seed-funded company. You can't just start hiring people.
Right. So let's touch on that team for just a second. As I mentioned in the in the intro, it's a team of like 5 people. So were these?
So
it was 4 for a long time.
It's actually it's Lee, myself, Lee. We had a consultant who worked as head of finance. And then, there's some external partnerships. Like we had a PR company. We have an assistant. We include her when we say our team of 4. Our assistant's included in that. So,
she focuses on social media. We have her doing, a number of different things, especially for a startup. You need everybody doing
multiple hats.
Right. So you've got you 2, you've got the assistant. Who's the one other? And where,
head of finance.
We have a head of finance.
Okay, that's it then. So I'm sitting here digging and like looking through the brush for the manufacturing experience, and it sounds like you all just made it. You developed that expertise.
Well, the 10,000 hours. That model about 10,000 hours.
What model about 10,000?
Well, if you do 10,000 hours,
become an expert,
you master it. Well, we're on that trajectory where, it's constant learning, constant reading, constant understanding. I actually read a book that one of the people for supply chain management recommended to me to read, and it was called Poorly Made in China. And when I was listening to this, one of my lead investors, who are our manufacturing partner, said things have really changed since the 70s. So a lot of the risks that I was reading about had been mitigated. So,
oh man,
it's definitely getting way more buttoned up overseas, and having an investor base that can really help us and teach us, we really leaned on it. So as much as we were 4 people, we had a lot of great people behind us really helping us expedite our way to market.
All right. So thank you for sharing all that about the manufacturing. It's super cool to see you get this far and see so much momentum with essentially a team of 4, including yourselves. But let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see. What's next for Frame?
We're going to disrupt the entire market of Pilates.
All right.
By making it accessible. For us, it's not only the D2C market, which is, the consumer market, but it's also the B2B market, which has a huge appetite for reformer Pilates. And, we get emails every single day to put our products in, all these REITs, condominiums, hotel chains, amongst others, micro gyms, and then also, people that want to open studios. So for us, it's creating new product. We have a Pilates box that is just, part of our repertoire. And then also, starting, having, merchandise like, clothing, socks, balls, amongst other things. There's a lot.
When he says balls, he means Pilates balls, I think.
Pilates balls, yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you clarified.
Yeah. Glad you clarified as well. And so and
also being in people's homes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we presently our frame reformer is in our first 50 early adopters, which was a partnership via Goop. I don't know if you're familiar with Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop.
Sure.
The feedback has been amazing.
We actually had somebody recently write us that she would like to sleep on the reformer. She loves it so much.
Yeah, no, she did.
So when you have your first 50 units in people's homes, you're definitely a little, worried that, wondering how it's going to go. But it's been an incredible experience so far from the early customers.
And now 500 just landed in the US, so getting ready to ship those out also.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot going on. I'm excited to see, especially when you all press go on the marketing. I'm excited to see what comes out of that. But we're moving on to the question that I love asking the most, and I'm going to ask this to each of you individually. And Lee, let's go with you first. What is your number one piece of advice for early stage entrepreneurs?
Don't listen to anybody other than yourself.
Did you steal mine?
I just think that, people look at all the risks that are involved in starting a business. And immediately, you know, the advice that they'll typically give you is like, don't do it. But f- them. You know, as blatant as possible, because if you have something that you believe in and that you think will, you know, be disruptive, and go for it. I just think that there's not enough entrepreneurs out there, you know, that are really out there to take the risk. And I think that if you are one of those entrepreneurs, take the risk. You only have one life. Go for it.
Go for it. And Melissa, go for it. What's your number one piece of advice for early stage entrepreneurs?
My number one piece of advice would be to trust your gut. So I'm very intuitive, and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have a built-in intuition that oftentimes is ignored. And if you trust your gut instinct, whether that pertains to hiring, whether it pertains to who you take on your cap table, because you're inviting people into your business, you have to trust your gut.
All right. I think both of those are excellent pieces of advice. And I thank you both for offering those. We're moving up right to the end here. This has been a lot of fun. I'm sad that it has to end. But last question, where can people connect with you online, and how can our listeners support Frame?
So we're at Frame Reformer on Instagram, where they can come and check out the content and kind of see the evolution of our company. And also, we have a website, framefitness.com, where you can go and purchase and kind of see what we're up to, see, you know, where we have been written about, see the awards that we've won already. I think the future is bright, and we're really excited to grow with our customers.
Awesome. Yep, we're going to put links to everything that you just said and everything else we talked about in the show notes over at startupsavant.com/podcast. If you're watching the video version of this, you can find the link directly below there. But that's going to be it. I think we all got a heck of a good education in the manufacturing process today. So thank you both for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Ethan.
All right, that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Startup Savant podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hey, if you're enjoying this show, hit that subscribe button below this video, but don't smash it. We like to keep things nice around here. And it's like I've always said, if you're friendly when pressing buttons on the internet, then the internet will bring you cookies. Nah, but really, subscribe to the show. All right, join us again next Wednesday morning for another awesome founder chat. And until then, go and build something beautiful.
The Startup Savant podcast is produced by Truick.